Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your host, Chris Wheeler. Hello, good evening, hello, and welcome to this second episode of the Spotlight series here at the Watford Pump House. Thank you all so much for coming out on this rather weird and rainy, wet day. Sorry if you had to wait too long out in the rain. But we've got a great episode for you this evening, but before I get onto that, there's just a couple of things that I wanted to let you know about. For the more observant of you, this episode is part of the Watford Fringe Festival, which has been running all month despite the coronavirus and all of that, largely thanks to the amazing volunteer team here. So that runs to the end of October, so please do head over to www.whatfringe.co.uk to see what else is left in the programme and support for that. And thank you so much for having us as part of the programme this year. Secondly, for those that are perhaps joining us for the first time this month, if you want to ask our guests any questions, you can head across to our Twitter page, which should appear behind me, which is @PHSpotlight. And at any point this evening, you can send in your questions via there, which I'll pick up on my mobile phone later in the show. Without further ado then, my guest is an extraordinary talent from the UK. She's a singer-songwriter in her own right, as well as one of the UK's finest leading ladies. I am utterly delighted and honoured to be joined tonight by Emma Hatton. We'll do it. Yeah. So, and I just should explain before, because those of you who are sitting there thinking, that's an odd choice to play, is it Frankie Lee, Jezebel, as our entrance song for Emma? That isn't, a suggestion of Emma's character at all. That is, in fact, you recorded it as part of Dreamboats and Petticoats' original cast album. Yeah. So with that cleared up, Emma Hatton, thank you so much for coming to a wet and windy Watford.
Thanks for having me.
How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. I can't believe that I didn't even know this place existed and I live 20 minutes down the road, so it's lovely to be here.
Great, and it's lovely to have you. Putting together notes, there is so much I want to talk to you about. Like, there's just pages and pages and pages. But let's start right at the very beginning. Okay. As a philosopher once said, it's a very good place to start. Because it's fair to say that theatre's always been in your life, but it's not been, it was in your younger days, you did a lot of sports, you were very active. What was the kind of tipping point that kind of led you down the theatre route rather than the sort of sport fitness route?
I was working, so I went to Loughborough University to get a sensible career option, and I'm so grateful for that right now, for obvious reasons. So I went and studied sports science with English. And I'd just gone straight through the education system. I was quite academic. I loved learning. I loved sport. I loved Amdram. I loved music. And my parents very sensibly said, look, just go and get a good degree if you want to carry on doing that. And after that, do what you want. So I came out of university and I got a job working for the British Heart Foundation, doing their physical activity and health programme, managing that. And I loved it. But I was getting itchy feet, and I just thought, there's something that's telling me that I haven't explored the performing avenue. And I was in a jazz band at the time, just doing kind of, I'd always done like the working men's clubs with my, pulling along my my own PA system, and I loved it, but it was always just a hobby for me, and I didn't know anybody that had done it professionally, because I was from quite a small rural area, and nobody had sort of gone on and done it professionally. So I thought it wasn't really possible. And I just thought, I was very fortunate that my parents were super supportive. I'd lost all of my grandparents and had a little bit of inheritance. And I thought, well, my grandparents were musical. So if I'm going to put it towards something, why don't I go and see if I can audition for some musical theatre courses? And because I'd already done a 3-year degree, I thought, well, maybe just a 12-month one. Yeah. And I took a gap year to do that in 2006, and I'm still on that gap year. It's quite a long one, but I loved it, and I was very, very fortunate that I continued to get work in the industry. So I thought, well, I'll make hay while the sun shines, and I'm glad I did.
Absolutely. And, so your first sort of major gig was Dreamboats and Petticoats, is that right?
Yeah, that was my first. When I came out of college, I was lucky enough to be cast in at the brilliant Fimbra Theatre. I don't know if any of you have been there in Earl's Court. So I went straight into my first job out of college there and did a show called When Midnight Strikes, and we got to do a cast album with that, which was amazing. And the Fringes, the Finborough is such a beautiful and very sort of highly esteemed fringe venue as well, so that was great. And I had a panto lined up. But personally, I was at a point where I was actually due to get married, and I had all that kind of, you know, personal life was my priority then, so I went down that route. And then I went back into sport because I thought, just, you know, I've had the fun now, I've done the gap year, I'll go back and work in a sensible job. And every time I went on the Underground and I saw a poster for a musical, it was like someone was kicking me in the stomach. I just had this really visceral, like, pang.
Yeah. And
I went to watch We Will Rock You, which was a show that I got to the finals for a few times, and I just cried all the way through it. And I thought, I'm clearly not ready to turn my back on this.
Yeah.
So I turned up to an open audition at 6 o'clock. I was like the last one to arrive, myself and AJ Dean, who actually ended up being in it as well, to an open audition. Stood on the stage at the Phoenix Theatre, which I then went on to play Ava at, doing Evita, and auditioned for Keith Strachan, who was the musical director, and
who
Bob
also wrote the theme to Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and Mistletoe and Wine.
I mean, those royalty checks must be...
I know. Good guy to know. So he and Bob Thompson, who then went on to direct me in Evita as well, cast me in Dreamboats, which was how we met as well.
Yes, indeed. So I was the touring production. Emma's in the West End, but
well, I toured to start with.
Did
yeah,
you?
we opened with a tour. We did a 6-month tour, and then to all of our surprise, because I don't know if anyone's seen it, it's a beautiful musical, but it's cheesy, and it just went straight into the West End.
Well, we never worked together.
No,
like
we did rehearsals and stuff, I think, together, because I was dance captain, so I was working with some of your cast, but no, we never actually got to work together on stage.
And what's that experience like creating a role? Like, you know, a lot of, so some of your other credits have sort of been stepping into very established roles, but with Donna, you were able to just give it your own spin.
Bit of a free rein, actually. I think that was we all said, I mean, myself and Jennifer Biddle, who got very close on that show, we played Sue and Donna, who were the two kind of floozies, basically. And I remember sitting in the rehearsal space, and both of us were new to musicals, doing this as kind of like our first job. And we both said, I feel like we're on the cusp of something really special here. We were working with Lawrence Marks and Maurice Gran, who wrote Birds of a Feather. Yeah. And I was new to it, so I didn't know any different. So I think looking back now, hearing you say that and having stepped into a lot of existing roles, it was such a privilege, but I don't think I was aware of how much of a privilege at the time. So I'll never forget, they would sit in the room, Lawrence and Morris would sit in the room with you, and they'd observe you in the rehearsal space, which is an interesting place to be with all of these young upstarts, like, you know, we're going into a show, and we were all a bit of a pain in the backside, to be fair, but we were young and having a lovely time. And there was this one scene where, so my character was the comedic role, which I would love to revisit more comedy roles, because I just love it. But she didn't have a lot to say, but she just had these great sort of cutting one-liners. Yeah. And I remember one of the scenes, they had myself and Ray, who AJ played my partner in the show, and we were just playing cards, and they'd watched me for quite a while, and they said, nah, we're going to give you a hula hoop. Can you hula hoop? And I was like, well, I'll learn. And so I spent a good 3 hours one day just kind of dusting off my hula hooping skills. Well,
it's a good job, because can we get the hula hoop in? Because she's got
a bit rusty at the moment. But yeah, and I think that was just so lovely, because they looked at our individual personalities and kind of went, do you know what, I think we can push that boundary a little bit and make her a little bit more this. And so that was a real privilege, yeah.
Dreamboats is it was an incredible show. My time on it was just the most joyous experience, because I think it meant so much. So those of you who don't know the show, it follows, it's set in 1950s, 60s?
Late 50s, early 60s, I think.
And follows, you know, a youth club and the goings and on in a youth club. But the audiences were sort of largely made up of those that had lived that experience, and just seeing the joy on their faces every single night. And I mean, an audience of that age, kind of, you know, that you're playing with some percentages. And I genuinely, my favourite story from my experience of Dreamboats was we were in, I think, Rill, when this is a genuine story that happened. Is I played Barry the drummer, one line, and
But what a line it was.
But what a line it was! I mean,
can you remember it? Because I can't. Wasn't it like, "Hey Laura, have a flower" or something?
Something like that. Yeah, I think it was purely only in there, so I didn't get paid as a musician. I got paid as an actor musician, which was a couple of £100 less a week. But genuinely, we were in Rill, and we sat there playing this song, and the lights came up, and 2 paramedics came in. They lifted a member of the audience out onto a board, wheeled him or her out, I couldn't quite tell, and the house lights went down, but without anybody actually paying any notice that someone's just been wheeled out. I don't know whether they survived but it was that sort of audience. But
yeah,
it was.
They were quite common, those situations during that show, weren't they? And I think we just kind of got a little bit immune to it, really, which is terrible. But you're right, it was, and I think they tapped so cleverly into the nostalgia. You know, that it was the retired sort of generation that they had their money to spend, and they would come and relive their youth. It was really, really special, and I think it's a bit like a bad penny, that show, isn't it? It just kind of keeps coming back. But I think it's testament to sometimes, it's not what's cool, it's kind of just what sort of evokes something in people. And I think music's got such a power to do that, and the audience members' faces, it was a real joy. Yeah.
So from Dreamboats, what was next?
What was next? Okay, so I auditioned for We Will Rock You 5 consecutive times. It took me a while to get in, and I do remember, God bless him, Tony Edge, our director, did say to me when I eventually walked into the meet and greet on the first day, he just said, "Well, darling, we just thought she keeps coming back, so we might as well give her a chance." I just kept going back. But what happened was I think this was the 3rd or the 4th time that I'd got to the final round for We Will Rock You, which was my dream show. I knew it was the one that I was really sort of suited to. And I kept getting really, really close. And then there was this one instance where I knew that I was on hold for the tour of We Will Rock You, and Bill Kenwright's office, who produced Dreamboats, had said to me, "We will keep your job open for you until you know either way." And I thought, wow, I must be special. And then I got a phone call going, "Actually, we've changed our minds. We've given your part to somebody else." Because I'd said, "Oh, great, I'll wait." And they said, "No, we need to know either way. You need to make a decision." So I said, "Well, I'm in the final for We Will Rock You. Like, I need to go for that." And I said, I'm going to have to wait." And they said, "Okay, well, we've changed our minds. We're not going to keep your job open for you. We've actually recast it." And I was like, "Oh, I'm clearly not that special." But that was probably quite a good thing to experience early on in my career, because it was cutthroat. And I respected why they'd done it. I think, it is dog eat dog, and they've got to protect their business and their show. And I think it was painful, but actually that happening to me quite early on was a really, really good lesson. Yeah. Because I had to, that was like a layer of skin that I had to grow moving on. So I left, and and all of my friends were staying, and it was such a close bond in Dreamboat. So I left that, and it was quite a dark time for me, because I then was unemployed, and the show that I loved was still happening.
So you hadn't got into Rock You at this point?
Hadn't got into Rock You, and I now hadn't got Dreamboat, so I was like in limbo. And then I auditioned for Rock You again.
Time 5?
Four. Didn't get it again, and then I auditioned again, and I eventually got it.
And your first role in Rock You was?
So I did 2 years, and I started off as second cover Scaramouche. Right. And then I did a year of that, and I got moved up the second year to be the first cover Scaramouche, first cover Meatloaf. And had I have not got Wicked, I remember saying I would have stayed in that job forever. And
second cover, that's like understudy?
Understudy, yes. So there's basically the lead role, the person that plays that part, and then you've got in the ensemble or the chorus, whatever you call them, in that particular show, you have somebody that steps up to replace them if they go off, and then you've got what I was, which would go on second in line, essentially. Yeah. Like Prince Harry.
The Prince Harry.
Yeah.
And Queen, did they get involved? Like, how was it working with them, or was it? But by that time, were they kind of?
Yeah, I mean, what I loved about that show so much was that every time I went into audition, I'd be like, "Hello, Brian, remember me? Back again." Yeah, Brian was always there at the final round. He's so involved in it, and he's such a wonderful soul. I think what's so special about that show and that environment to work in is that Brian May in particular knows everybody.
Right.
So you'd meet him in the stairwell dressed in some obscure costume and he'd say, "Hello, Emma, how are you?" And you'd be like, "Hello, Brian." Yeah, amazing. You know, just he such a personal approach to it. Roger Taylor would be there in the finals as well with his shades on.
With his shades.
Just looking ever so cool. And they would come and be involved in, so I was fortunate enough to be there for the 10-year anniversary as well.
Right.
And funny story, Brian May was all set to come up through the rising platform, you know, on the big guitar solo. And it didn't work because Roger Taylor had disobeyed everybody's sort of request to not have his son on the bandstand with him. So he was like, no, I want my son on the drum stand with me, which meant that it was too heavy, which meant that Brian couldn't come up. So Brian was stuck underneath. I think Katie's in the audience. I think that's right, Katie, isn't it? It was, yeah, Brian was stuck. So somebody had to go and kick
Roger Taylor's son off of...
So, well, no, not kick the son off. No.
Right,
kick part of the moving part of the stage to try and dislodge whatever was, you know.
Yeah.
And Brian comes up late, so he's already like playing his solo in the basement, and everyone's come to see Brian May, and he's like done half his solo like 20 foot under the stage. It was brilliant. But it was just one of those environments that was just. I still think about it now at every job that I've done, and I'm sure we'll get to that, but every single job that I've done, and I think anyone that you speak to that was in We Will Rock You, nothing compared to it. It was a family. It was a very, very special show to be a part of. It was a wonderful environment. They were very careful about who they selected to go into that show because they went very much on reputation and personality as much as they did about talent. And you could tell.
Yeah.
Because anybody that's done that show, it's like you're all kind of cut from the same cloth.
Right. Because I found it was interesting. You always describe yourself as not, you know, that you're an outsider in like the West End Wendy, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's although you've kind of, you know, you've had a career that is absolutely kind of at the centre of some of those massive shows. But I sort of hearing you say that's the kind of roles that you've had, actually ones where that they've potentially look for something different than just a carbon copy of the rest.
Yeah, I think I always struggled. I've got quite it's actually mellowed a little bit now because I've had to learn to sing a little bit more correctly and safely because I couldn't have done the roles that I've done without having that slightly more technical foundation. But I've never really had singing lessons, so my sound was just this raw, you know, just powerful emotion just pouring out of me.
Right.
And so I think the concern for them in the casting process was that's lovely, but can you sustain that very rocky, you know, I'd get so excited and the adrenaline would be going that I'd go into the room and I'd like sound like Janis Joplin, you know, that raspy, raw quality on parts of I mean, I didn't sound that good, but, you know, it was that kind of very rocky sound, which is great, but I think they could also see that it was coming from this place of adrenaline, and I think there was a fear for them that can she sustain that 8 times a week? Yeah. And actually, by being second cover, and then moving up to first cover, and then moving on to do other things, it gave me the opportunity to hone that technique and to build up my stamina and to kind of learn how to sing a little bit safer. Yeah, because I was a bit, you know, just went for it.
And that's a very real part of it, as you say, that sustainability, isn't it? 8 shows a week on that material as well is huge. Yeah, massive. And I think I had a conversation with someone recently that said, oh, you know, you've done so well to get where you have. And I said, yeah, a lot of it's luck. And then they said, yeah, but I'm sure, you know, there's also a lot of hard work that goes into it. And I thought, it got me thinking, because I thought, yeah, do you know what? It's luck getting the job.
but it's, I think sustaining the job is where the discipline, talent, I think that's the thing that sets it apart. Yeah, there's a lot of people that could get the job.
Yeah,
but I think it's the sustaining of the job that is not luck.
Yeah.
That then comes down to your approach, your attitude, the other side of it, I guess.
So, Rock You, and then?
So, I was in We Will Rock You, and it was the same casting director, Pippa Alien, who cast Wicked. And I'd never been seen for Wicked before. And for all that people say about the musical theatre industry, there's also a lot of loyalty as well. There can be a lot of loyalty. You know, it's kind of better the devil you know. If you've cast someone in one show, then and they've done a good job, then great. They'll probably do a good job in another show. And I got an audition come through for Wicked, and I remember I was actually in physio at the time. I was waiting in the physio ed's office. I'd obviously, I don't know, got something wrong. I'd done something in the show because I was dancing a lot in We Will Rock You. And I got this this audition come through, and I just thought, oh my God. Like, there was not one part of me that dreamed that I would come close to even being seen for that show, let alone anything else. So, because for me, Elphaba was, and still is, kind of the pinnacle. Yep. Which is a good and a bad thing. I think a lot of people put it on a pedestal, and kind of it becomes this almost scary, unattainable thing, and it is just a job. But at the time, I'd never even gone in for ensemble or for anything. So I think that's kind of what worked in my favour. I turned up, I remember, this is terrible, I'm so sorry, but I'd overslept, I hadn't warmed up, I looked half dead, and I just went into the room, and what I'm basically trying to say is I don't know whether I deserve to get the job, because I just went in, but maybe the fact that I was so kind of relaxed about it. Yeah. I don't think I thought that it was even going to be an option. I was like, I can't sing that. Yeah. That's like way beyond. So, and they were crafty. They always took the Elphabas in early in the morning, which is just cruel, but just to see, I guess a lot of people were in shows already to see what their vocal stamina was, to see what their vocal health was, because it's such a tricky one on that level. And I remember going to Pimlico, which was like the other end of where I was living as well, and obviously being out here. And I went in and I sang Somebody to Love because it was in my muscle memory, and on the which it was like that raspy sound. In We Will Rock You, you kind of just ping onto those notes, so you're not up there all the time. Whereas Elphaba is up there all the time. So they were like, we need to hear that you can do that clean and strong. And I thought, I don't think I can do that. So they said, can you just do that note and clean it? And I went, yeah. I thought, I don't know if I can do this. And it just came out. And I thought,
apparently I can.
Yeah. And seven auditions I did for that. 7 auditions. 7. And I actually got laryngitis at the time because I was on for Scaramouche. And then I was just going on pure adrenaline and I was one of those people that I'd never sung Defying Gravity. I'd enjoyed it, but I'd never sung it. I would never have sung it. It's not I sing jazz. So I'd enjoy it, but I'd never actually tackled it. So they sent me the material, and I was living in a flat in North London at the time, and it was awful. It was really, and I'm not just saying that, it was terrible, because it's a massive sing.
Huge sing.
And I was not sounding pretty at all. And then I think what happened was it was just the adrenaline in the room was getting me through, but I wasn't doing it safely or properly. So by the end of the 7-week audition process, I was like, I had nothing. So when I actually got offered standby, I thought, I better go and have some singing lessons, because I can't sing this.
Before we then get on to all the nitty-gritty of what it's like to be painted green and what happens, let's have a look at you in Wicked.
And if I'm flying solo, at least I'm flying free. To those who ground me, take a message back from me. Tell them how I am defying gravity. I'm flying high, defying gravity. And soon I'll match them in free now.
absolutely.
Oh, thank you.
Is that on top of a roof? Where are you at that point?
Top of the ITV studios. Yeah, it was, I'd just taken over
Right.
as Elphaba. I'd just come back that day to work
Yeah.
after having tonsillitis. And they said, right, we're going to put you on the roof and you're going to sing Defying Gravity. I was miming there, but I wasn't. I was singing along. No, I just sung it in the studio downstairs.
Oh, right,
like I'd recorded it a few times. And it's hard for me because I'm obviously hitting all the notes, but I know that that's not a performance that I was hugely proud of in terms of vocals.
And then we've just blown it up on the
No,
screen.
it's fine. I'm so used to it because it's the one that always comes up. But it's one of those where you give yourself such a hard time, but I know the story behind that. So
Right.
I know that how, when I was recording it downstairs in the studio in my dressing gown with like a stocking cap on my head and a green pea face, I felt awful, and I was like, everyone's going to be watching this. And actually, that was, again, quite a good lesson because we give ourselves such a hard time, but the response from that was so wonderful and so encouraging, actually from within the industry as well. I had a lot of people that I've always looked up to messaging me or tweeting me saying, wow, like, that's how it's done. And I just thought, God, we waste so much time, don't we? Like, giving ourselves such a hard time about things.
Yeah.
Why can't we just go, that it's real life, and you're always going to have, there's always going to be something, whether it was that. And
I think this is the really interesting, because we were saying backstage about the sort of responsibility of a role like Elphaba, because you're stepping into something that's got a huge history and a massive fan base, and unlike your role in Dreamboats where it was yours to make, actually there's some quite strict parameters around that character, right? And sort of furthermore, like a responsibility to the audience, because like, they can be quite unforgiving.
Massively, yeah. And that was a big learning curve for me, because ever going onto YouTube and reading comments about yourself is something you do once and you never do it again, because people can sit behind a screen and say some really mean things. And it's getting to that point of, I guess, self-acceptance, where you go, I'm doing what is a very demanding job, and I'm doing my best, and I'm trying my hardest, and I'm taking care of myself to the best of my ability, but I am a human being, I'm not a robot. And that took me a while to get, because I'm a sensitive person. I think we tread quite a difficult line as performers, where we have to have this incredibly thick skin on a critique level. Yeah. But we have to be so empathetic to be able to access those emotions to portray characters realistically.
And then there's that whole other thing which I think gets a lot of chat about on sort of social media and stuff, that audience care of like the whole stage door thing is an expectation now, isn't it? That people come around and they see you afterwards. And that's, you can be there for hours, right?
Yeah, and I think you get to a point where you want to have that bond and that relationship, because it is part of the job, particularly in a show such as Wicked, where Elphaba in particular, I mean, the show itself is so, it's so important on so many levels, because you've got so many themes that run through it, which I think are so important and encouraging for particularly young people, where they can identify with a character who is different based on the colour of her skin, based on the fact that she is such an outsider. And you see these youngsters that are going through that experience, not literally the same experience, but they're experiencing the same emotions, and they see the journey, this beautiful arc of this young girl who has a hard time, but she, at the core of her, fights for what she believes in and stands up. And at the end of it, you see that she has this beautiful friendship that forms as a result of that. And you would see the connection that these youngsters had with the role, and so you want to take the time to spend with them to honour that.
Yeah.
You know, and also I think to go on stage every night and play that role and take all of the pros and the positives that come with that, you also have to be respectful of the fact that that show would not be as successful as it is without the audience support, without those people that come back time and time and time and time again.
Yeah.
It's kind of a cyclical thing, you know. You both kind of give something to the other, and you come out at stage door, and there's nights where you're tired. I think with everything, whether we'd be talking about in theatre or in life in general, I think that as long as you speak to people respectfully, you know, you're not trying to be mean, but you have to come in and do the show again tomorrow, and it's a 2-show day tomorrow, and you have a train to catch. As long as you know, I'm always going to feel bad if I can't stop and talk to somebody, but as long as I feel like I've done it in as kind and respectful a way as possible, then I have to learn to just go, okay, I've done what I can, and my intentions were good, and hopefully they will realise that. But it is hard because, you know, they spend a lot of money, and a lot of them have got really bad mental health problems as well, and this is their form of escapism. Yeah. And I've been there in the audience and benefited from that escapism. Yeah. So you've understood why that means so much to them. It is a huge responsibility, but at the same time, it's a privilege as well. Yeah. Yeah. So there I am sitting in the Apollo Victoria on your opening, your press night for
press
when you
night.
took
I know
over.
where this is going.
And actually, I will be gushing for a moment. I think it's one of the most astonishing performances I've seen. Like that first entrance when you ran out, you were that innocent, you know, like. But then, defying gravity, it was just, you know, that, as you say, that arc was just incredible.
Oh, thank you.
But I think all of our hearts were in our mouths when, you know, that moment in Defying Gravity where they barge in through the doors, you back up, and everyone just expects that lift. And it didn't happen.
It didn't happen.
And what on earth happened, and what do you do? And because that's the moment everyone sees,
my
right?
My palms are sweating a little bit just thinking about it, actually, because it was I'm closing my eyes and I'm right back there. I think even you just describing the show, I've got goosebumps because I think we're all just missing theatre at the moment, and I think it was such an amazing show to be a part of, and I miss it. I miss theatre. I miss that show. But that particular instance, so essentially you're terrified anyway, because you're like, this is my press night, and anyone is in, and it's one of those roles that people are like sitting there going, okay, come on then, give us your best shot. Yeah. And you think, okay, I'm feeling good of voice. Okay, this is good. And I had this little ritual that I'd developed over my time as standby where, because I'd been lucky that I'd had a chance to sort of bed it in, and I'd done quite a few shows up to this point. But I would run to the back, so you'd go, I hope you're happy, my friend. And then you've got that time where the guards come in and they grab Glinda, and you run upstage in the dark, and I would go, just to check it was there. And I'd always do it really quietly because I'd think my mic might be on, because one or two times they'd been like, oh, Emma, we heard you go, and I'm like, I'm really sorry, but I've got to sing a big song. I'm just checking it's there. And you have this quite intricate jigsaw puzzle of you've got your bag, and you've got your broom, and you've got your cloak, and you step into this. I feel like I want to demonstrate because I feel like I need to get into character. Okay, so you've got, if I can remember it. So you're like in this position, and then you've got your broomstick, and you've got your bag. Yeah, your bag's here, and you've got this cloak. So you run upstage, and you swing the bag like round, and you've got the broom, and you've got to step into this thing which is open. Step in and like hoist the bag over so it doesn't get caught. Right. Your broom's here, and then you close this like circuit. And you're doing all of this? No, there's no stage hands around you? No. You're on your own. Right. And you've got a platform that's, you know, that size-ish. And you close it, and you're ready. And you go forward with your broom, and your bag's here, and it's all great. And you feel safe because the thing's shut. Right. So as a circuit, if the thing's not shut, you won't fly. So it's great. but it needs to be open for you to get in. And it was shut.
Ah, okay.
And so I'd gone from, in previous shows, going, just checking, to just screaming, it's shut! I can't get in! It's shut! And I was like, I don't know what to do. Because I can't get in, I don't know how to, I can't open it.
Right.
So it's like, it's me! And I'm supposed to be up there, and I'm 5'1" of me, just like, hi.
I mean, it wasn't like that at all. I think I remember you rushing forward, and I think everybody was so with you, just going, yes, come on.
The most brilliant bit, though, is that plan B is, because everyone's normally like, oh, she's so scary. I'm 5'1", so they're lying on the floor like, oh, she's so scary, and I'm just stood there like this little pea. And but you're right. I think I love adrenaline.
Yeah, and we all do as an audience as well.
Yeah,
we love
and sometimes when things go wrong, they're the best things because you're like, okay, I need to do something here, and I don't think I've ever sung it that powerfully or that well ever since. I think it was just like sheer fear of like, oh gosh, well I haven't got the whole flying thing, which everyone's come to see. Yeah. So I have to make this sound really good.
And did someone's head roll for doing that? Did we ever find out who did that?
They thought it was my fault, but then they thought I'd run at the thing at a funny angle, and I was like, let me show you all the ways that I couldn't have closed it. I think it was probably a combination of everyone being a little bit stressed with it being press night. Right. Things happen, and all I needed to do was just pull a little lever and it would have opened, but I know that now. Yeah. Which is helpful for my next press night.
Yes, whenever that may be. Yeah. So from Elphaba, you then kind of took on another iconic female role, and that is Eva Peron in Evita. And there were some big shoes to fill. I mean, Madonna in the film, Elaine Page, and like so. But she's a totally different character, I guess, isn't she?
Yeah.
How did they compare as roles?
Yes and no, actually, because I think the sort of, you're not sure whether you're supposed to love or hate Ava, because she was multifaceted, and it's like, is she good? Is she bad? Same with Elphaba.
Yeah, true, actually.
And what I loved about Ava was the kind of breadth of the character, because she was a real person. Yeah. So it wasn't that she was well written. They'd taken it from a real life historical figure. So there was just so much to play with, and I loved the fact that on a vocal level I learned so much, because I mean, you can tell it was written by a man, because they'd be like, okay, you're gonna sing this bit, and then you're gonna drop right down there, and then we're gonna give you a massive belty song, and then a really exposed number with just, and it was all, the ranges were not friendly. Right. So it wasn't written by a woman, because a woman would have gone, that's really tricky, because that's really high for me. So to get from there to there is going to, so it was just, that was quite an interesting thing for me, because I thought, oh gosh, I don't know if I perhaps would have put that song straight after that one, but the challenge of that was really exciting and terrifying. But from a stylistic level, you had classical, you had rock belt, you had spoken, you had very tricky rhythms to play with. And I danced. I got to dance, which was lovely. And then as a character, what I loved about her was that I could come into work, and if I'd had a particularly bad day, or I'd had words with somebody on the train or something, I could come in and I could channel that anger or that frustration through her. Or there were times when I was in a really playful mood and I could be really mischievous with her, and there was all the room to play with that. And I think, I don't know whether it was because it was kind of in-house directed, whereas with Wicked you've got the Americans kind of overseeing everything, and the British team oversee the placement of it. But I also don't know whether it was because I'd started to earn my stripes. Yeah. And going back to work for Bill Kenwright, who I adore. He's such a great guy. He's tricksy, but we love him. And it's like I could have really in-depth conversations with him about
you know, why I wanted to play it in this way. And
Yeah.
if he challenged me, why are you doing it like that?
Mm-hmm.
And I had a reason for it because I'd done my research.
Yeah.
He would say, all right, little one, do it. And I loved that because I had some freedom to play around with it. And ultimately, yes, she was, you know, I was portraying somebody who was, you know, a real life figure, but it's still art.
Yeah.
Which is why the argument for me when they say, you know, when it was done at Regent's Park, and I think, I'm not sure who played it, but it wasn't a white woman. And I think, but that's great because this is not the situation, you know, we're not, it's the real person doing it. We are telling a story, and how wonderful that we can put our own kind of interpretation on it and our own angles on it. I think it's great.
Absolutely. We've got a couple of clips of you in Evita.
Have you?
Yes.
The truth is I never left you. All through my wild days, my manic sister. Not just for Harold, but for all of us. All of us!
I see. You have to use your voice in that, don't you? Quite a lot.
Yeah, sorry, I'm laughing because the guy that played my husband, Perron, is one of my very close friends, and he looks very serious there, but he's never serious. He's just the biggest joker. And the number of times, I'm quite naughty on stage,
Right.
and the number of times I would walk on for that scene, which is supposed to be very demure, and you know, and I'd like trip over my skirt or something, or he would mouth something at me that was massively inappropriate, and then I'd be coming forward for this big number, just trying not to laugh. And seeing that is really lovely because I obviously never get to see it from this angle, and I have such amazing memories. I think it's testament to, you know, to a show's success sometimes, that if you have a good bond with your cast, I think that you get the most out of people, and I really lucked out with my Shay and Perron in that show.
So alongside all of your theatrical career, you've had an equally successful music career. How many EPs have you released?
Two. Two EPs, one single.
And the single was for the movie?
Film.
For the film.
Yeah.
And what was that like?
Surreal. It's so funny, I think we have this, I certainly do have this kind of preconception that particularly the music world, and I guess with musical theatre when I wasn't in it, but you from an outside perspective, you think that it's one thing, and then the reality is far removed. And I thought that singer-songwriters, you know, had studios that they went to, and I'm sure a lot of them do, and you know, it's this very otherworldly thing to me, like it's something that other people do. And I have music management, so I'm very lucky that they also have a film arm to what they do as well. It's actually the producers of Dreamboats that manage me, so that's where that connection comes from Universal Music. And they've got this film arm, so they had this film that was coming out. They did Finding Your Feet with Imelda Staunton.
Yes,
Yeah, it's a beautiful film. If you've not seen it, it's really, really good. And I actually did some singing in that as well. I got roped into that somehow. But so the film was coming out, and my manager just rang me and said, "We need a song for this film." And I said, "Oh, that's nice." And he said, "No, we want you to write it." And I said, "Oh, no, I don't write." And he said, "Well, come on, have a go." I thought, all right. So I got my old keyboard, like dusted off my old keyboard in my loft, and then, you know, with the demo settings on it, I just like had a little play around. I'm very rusty on the keyboard. And I think because there was a deadline and a specific project, I work quite well to goals, and so I kind of just had a little bit of a play around, and then they asked me to sort of tweak a few things, and I thought it was awful. I thought it was so bad, and they loved it, and I just thought, okay. So I didn't really tell anybody about it because I thought it was just really awful, and then they said it's going in the film and it's going to be the title song of the film. And my boyfriend at the time was a drummer and very good at music production. So I went into his studio that he used to hire, and
we kind of had a little play around with it, and he got on an old piano and did a couple of bits. He doesn't play piano either. We were both just blagging it. Played a few things, sent it off to them as a demo, like as a first draft. This is an idea. And they went, great, it's in.
Great.
And I said, no, no, it's not finished. And they went, no, it's great, it's in. And I said, oh, okay. And bizarrely, it had probably as much, if not more, interest, and people had more enthusiasm for it than my own EPs. And I thought, oh, that's a bit of a kick in the teeth. I really like those. I worked really hard on those. But I guess it just goes to show that sometimes you can't detach yourself from the project enough. So you can't hear what other people are hearing.
Yeah.
But it was amazing. Then we got taken to Soho House to the premiere. Like Sam Claflin sat in front of me, and I'm just sat there like watching this film. And then this janky old song that I've written comes on in a scene that he's in, and I'm like, oh God. But it was great, and that's where the money's at apparently, because you get royalties if you've written the song. So I'm learning how to write songs now, guys. That's where I'm putting my energy right now.
I think Keith Strachan, circling right back to where we started,
Yeah.
I think he said that famously he wrote the Millionaire theme tune in 15 minutes with his son, because it's all based on the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire from Stepping Out. Is that right?
Is it really? I
yes,
didn't know that.
it's a sort of whatever the musical term is of the song Who Wants to Be a Millionaire from Stepping Out, which he said he wrote in 15 minutes. And I mean, I think the first royalty check was in the millions, so
Yeah.
that is where it's at. I mean, one of my favourite bands is Postmodern Jukebox, and I'm sure everybody's, or a lot of people have heard of Postmodern Jukebox, and you fronted them for their recent European tour?
Yeah, so I did 2.
How did that come about?
Do you know what? It's really funny because
Was it another blag that you just sent it off and it happened?
It kind of. I was chatting to my mum and dad about this the other day. They went, how did you get involved in that again? I said, I can't really remember. So I checked my Twitter inbox, because I knew that I'd had a couple of chats with Scott Bradley. And I think what I'd probably done after maybe a glass of wine one night was just drop him a tweet and say, hey, like, I like to sing, I like your stuff. That probably, something like that. Because the first message on the inbox from him was, hi Emma, we're coming to London with the show. We're playing the Roundhouse. I've got 2 tickets if you want to come and watch. And I was like, how have I made this connection? And then I did a concert with Shoshana Bean.
Right.
Because she played Elphaba in Wicked on Broadway. And I think Scott had seen that I'd been doing some stuff with shows, so he was like, there's the connection. But I'm not entirely, I don't really know. I think it was just a little bit sort of...
So here's us trying to, bring people on, say it's hard work, diligent,
Yeah.
actually, it's a glass of wine and Twitter.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Great.
And he actually said, he messaged me this one day, he said, I'm in London, do you fancy getting together and having a jam? And I was like, yeah. What I didn't know was that was an audition.
Oh.
I didn't realise.
Yeah.
And he booked a space in, I think it was off Gray's Inn Road.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd made the whole conversation seem very like, oh, hey, do you know of any spaces that we can use? And I was just like, oh, hey, dude, And actually, after I went in and he just played piano and I think I just sang I Want to Dance With Somebody in like a Whitney Houston in like a postmodern jukebox style. And then I just got an email saying, hey, Emma, we're doing a tour, do you want to join us?
Wow.
And I was like, oh, that was an audition. Why couldn't all auditions be like that, where they don't tell you it's an audition?
Yeah.
And you just are just relaxed and having fun.
And how long were you on the road with them?
I did 6 weeks. Oh gosh, it would have been February 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did another 6 weeks with them 2 years ago exactly now. So
right.
Yeah. And it was just amazing. I made the most incredible friends. The first time I did it, was my favourite time. I made some incredible friends on that, and we played London Roundhouse, which was amazing, Paradiso in Amsterdam, which is just the most incredible music venue,
Mm-hmm.
and just awesome.
And how does
really
it differ from doing that sort of show to a musical?
Freedom.
Right.
Complete freedom. I don't think I've ever been so nervous.
my agent, Bobby, who you know as well, bought me a lovely sort of journal. And I was looking back through it not that long ago. And it was when I was at the airport waiting to fly to New York to go to rehearsals for Postmodern Jukebox. And I remember feeling this weird contrast of emotions where I was, pinch me, I'm going to the States to rehearse with Postmodern Jukebox, like this is crazy. But I was the only British girl.
Right.
They hadn't used any British people before. So I was just and I don't know if they have, they've used one or two guys in the band. But yeah, I was absolutely terrified because I think Americans are so confident. You know, it's a different energy over there.
Yeah.
And I really did, and they'd all worked together before, and I was this, you know, I just didn't know what it was going to be like. And the warmth that I felt from these people. And yeah, I just remember going into the studio, and I also got given Creep, which was one of their most iconic songs, and I thought, oh, no pressure.
Yeah.
But actually, it was so lovely because everybody knows that version who knows Postmodern Jukebox, but not once did anyone say to me, you've got to sing it like that. What they celebrate is that you bring you to it. So I'd gone from this very regimented, hit this note, make this vowel sound, you know, you need to come off on this count, don't overdo it on this bit, to just do what you want. Yeah, which was amazing. Just the best thing for me because my background is jazz, which is all about just singing how you feel. So you'd go on stage, and as long as you stuck to the arrangement, even if you didn't stick to the arrangement, they'd go with you. I remember, and it's a funny story, but it didn't feel funny at the time. It was my second show for them. Right. And we were in Cardiff at, I can't remember the venue. So I walk on stage and I go to the mic in the centre, and everything's quite loose for them. You know, they drink whiskey on stage. It's all quite chilled out. So I'm like the last number in the show, like the big encore. And you've got this lovely guy, Sharik Hassan, on keys, and he's just doing like very twiddly, you know, noodling around, waiting for me to come in with, when you were here before. I walked to the centre of the stage, and I couldn't remember the lyric. Everyone's looking at me, and he's just going, so I walk over to him, and I go, how does it start? And he said, I don't know. So then I walk from that side of the stage over to this side of the stage where Adam, the bass player, is drinking a beer. And I go over to him and I go, Adam, what's the first lyric? And he's like, I don't know, man. I play bass. And I was like, oh, God, no one knows. No one knows what the lyric is. And then someone had to Google it for me.
On stage?
So one of the band had to Google it for me.
What sort of time period is this?
I reckon it was a good 2 minutes.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and Sharik was just like, what's going on? Just like playing. And I just thought, I was so nervous because for me, habitually, anything that's like, I've gone wrong, you get noted on, you know, and I was like, this is my second show for them. This is the most iconic song that they've ever recorded. They're going to rip me to shreds. And I came off and I was like, Adam, I'm so sorry. He was like, don't worry about it, it's fine. And I was like, oh, okay, I like these people. This is good. I can get on board with this. Yeah, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So part of the Spotlight series is about, and together with the Pump House, kind of inspiring a new generation for our industry. And when we knew you were joining us this evening, we sort of put out a call to see whether we could entice some volunteers to kind of show you something that they've been working on.
Okay.
And hopefully, you know, you then maybe can give a few pointers as to how they might develop that craft. You know, Pump House and Lee and the team here are doing a great job of making this a sort of hub for emerging talent. So would that be okay if we brought a couple of people on?
Love to, yeah.
Guys, we've got two incredible volunteers from the Youth Theatre here who have been hugely brave to come up on this platform and show Emma and all of you what they've been up to. So without further ado, I'd love to welcome to the stage Samantha Vale.
What's that?
Putting my
good. So good. Now, Emma, try not to channel your inner Simon Cowell, because I know you've got a... But, yes.
So Samantha, was it? It's amazing. And now, I have heard that song before, and it's from something about comets, is that right?
Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812.
There you go. Can you tell me a little bit about what that show is and why you've chosen to sing that song? Because I think that's always a good starting point.
I don't actually know much about the show itself, but the song I used with my old singing teacher just because I heard it and I really liked it. And I don't know why I understood like the emotion of it, but that was one of the things he said. He was like, I hate that song usually, but you know what? It kind of convinced me. Because I liked like the emotional journey of it in general.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a really lovely place to start with any song. I think if something speaks to you, you don't necessarily have to be able to articulate why. It's just, I think that is the power of music, in that sometimes it's something about it that just resonates with you. It's always really interesting. First of all, I think you're incredibly brave to get up and do that. I think it's always terrifying to get up and sing in front of anybody for the first time. But I think that it's always quite interesting to look at the context in which you're performing a song. So if you're obviously doing it in a show, then you have the aid of, you've got characters, you've got costume, you've got a storyline which has led you to that point. You obviously came in at a certain point in the song, so you're kind of like, you know, you're hitting the ground running, so we haven't had the whole trajectory of the story. First of all, I would love to say that I think the tone of your voice is beautiful. You have a really lovely, light, breathy head voice quality. I'm not really one for sort of naming the voices, because I think it's just a voice. I think your speaking voice, your singing voice, it's just one voice. So I think we can all get a little bit caught up, me included, in this is my head voice, this is my mixed voice, this is my chest voice. I think it's about accessing emotionally where it feels like it wants to go, and when you pull back, and I think your control was beautiful. You've got a lovely vibrato, and then when you opened up into your sort of fuller belt sound, I love the way that you kind of played around with it and didn't just give us one tone all the way through. Just a little pointer for you approaching any kind of song is, when you're doing it in a concert setting or standalone as you are right now, just with a microphone, imagine that you are singing it to somebody, so that it gives you a form of connection. I think we can get very, I'm guilty of this sometimes as well. I can, and this isn't what you were doing, but I can get very like enjoying the sound of my own voice. And I think we have license in concert settings to be a little bit more musical with it, as opposed to acting, because obviously we've not got the whole scenario and the characters. But I still think there was a lyric in there about happiness. And I think she says the word happy in what you were singing. You make me happy, or it makes me happy, or something. And I think take the music away and look at the lyrics and put it into your own language. So you may not speak exactly how those lyrics are. It's quite poetic, but put it in your own language and attach that to an emotion that you can relate to, a feeling that you've had. So that when you hit those points in the song, that point of happiness, what makes you happy, so that you're not thinking about it, but you've already done that emotional work, so that we see it connect facially with you. Even it doesn't need to be a big expressive thing, but we see that we're not just singing the song, we're going where the song is taking us. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Amazing.
Is that helpful?
Yeah.
Amazing. Well done. It was
Thank you so much. Let's give Sam
Thank you.
another big round of applause there. So our next hugely brave volunteer is Aaron Marshall, singing a song from Kinky Boots, Not My Father's Son. Aaron.
Oh, Aaron.
When I was just a kid, everything I did not like some albatross. I begin to fit in. Look at me, powerless and holding my breath, trying hard to repress what scared him to death. It was never easy to be his type of man. To breathe freely was not in his plan. And the best part of me is what he wouldn't see. I'm not my father's son. I'm not the image of what he dreamed of, with the strength of Sparta and the patience of Job. Still could be the one to echo what he'd done and mirror what was not in me.
Beautiful.
Amazing work.
Aaron, is it Aaron?
Yeah.
Aaron, yes, not my father's son. Have you seen Kinky Boots?
No.
You haven't? It's amazing. It is lovely. And that song is so beautiful. It's really, really lovely to hear it again. I loved the stillness of how you sung it. I think there's a danger sometimes with songs that don't move too much, that people can try and overcompensate and try and make it more interesting than it needs to be. And I really liked what you did with that. I think there's something that, I'm going to sound like such a jazz nerd now, but Miles Davis was obsessed with the space between the notes. That's what makes it interesting. And I think that was what I really enjoyed about your performance, was that you allowed the space. I think we have, particularly with the newer generations coming into musical theatre, there's a real, and it's very impressive. I can't do it, which is probably why I'm going to say this now. But the riffing is a big thing, and it's really, really lovely to have someone stand there with you've got a very there's a lovely kind of a breathiness about your tone, but it's not too breathy, and I'd love to hear it when it really, really opens out. I know you've obviously only had like a limited amount of time with it. I love watching people, and there were quite a number of times you shut your eyes when you were singing it, and I think it's dangerous sometimes, because people say, like, when you close your eyes as a performer, you shut out the audience. But for me, it pulls me in, because I think, where's he gone? Like, why is he gone there? Why is he closing his eyes? Is he recalling a memory that's taking him to that place? Despite the fact I said I loved the stillness, I wanted a little bit more. I want you to feel a little bit more comfortable in your stillness. So there's a difference between a stillness that is like, I'm still because I'm frightened to move, or a stillness because you're rooted and you don't know where you want to go next. You don't know. You're working out your feelings as you're singing them. And I think sometimes when we sing, it's such a challenge, and I have this when I teach people a lot, in that you've got this really difficult job where you've got to know everything really well and it be really, really rehearsed, but the audience have got to believe that you're feeling it and doing it for the first time. So you have to make those instincts feel like they are happening for the first time. So I would say for you, what I would love for you to try and explore as a performer is to allow that stillness to just be, and allow the lyrics and the thoughts to guide how you express that in your body. Because I don't think naturally we don't just stand and sing, but we are asking people to kind of suspend their disbelief with this, aren't we? But this, I guess it's like anything, it's observe, and we used to do this at drama school, observe people, observe your own body language. When you're around friends, look at how when they're uncomfortable or awkward, like I'm a terrible hair fiddler, or I bite my nails, or things like that. And I think it's, for you, it's the hands are together. Now that could be that actually you're very, very comfortable and your hands are together, or it could be that that's a nervousness. And if that's how you feel when you're singing that song and how you think that character feels, then that's great. But that's Aaron, that's not the character. Yeah, so it's just exploring, I think, when you're singing that song, allow yourself to be still, but feel where your body wants to go if it wants to. Yeah? Amazing. Thank you so
Aaron.
much.
Thank you so much. Let's give Sam and Aaron another round of applause, because that is just such a brave thing to do. Thank you so much. So, we've talked a lot about your past up until now. I want to talk about your podcast, because I'm really, really excited. You told me about this a couple of weeks ago, and I think it's an incredible idea. And tell us about your podcast and sell it.
Okay, so my podcast has been something, it's my logo that my beautiful friend designed for me. It's called Dear Music, and it's essentially a love letter to music. So I've always wanted to do radio, but it's tough to get into radio. So it's like, what's that saying? If Muhammad won't go to the mountain, bring the mountain to... Is that it?
Yeah,
something like that. I'm terrible with these things. But it's like, if the BBC aren't going to come to me and give me a primetime slot on Radio 2, then I'm going to have to come up with my own. I love talking and I love music. So, but it all kind of came about. It's been a very long labour of love. Mm-hmm. I am an ambassador for the brilliant music therapy charity Nordoff Robbins, and I'm a huge advocate of the power of music, and I use it in my own life, and I'm just fascinated by it. I think it's a wonderful power that we don't tap into enough. And I see a lot of friends and colleagues who struggle with mental health, and there's a huge uptake of people going onto medication, which I am, not saying is wrong. I think it absolutely has its place, but I got curious about what are the alternatives. Mm-hmm. And for me, I've always self-medicated or therapized, whatever the words are, with music. It's always been my go-to for everything. And working with Nordoff Robbins, I was actually working with them on the concept of a podcast, and what I found was that I had to go through, I'd have an idea and I'd have to get it approved, and then I'd have to, and everything kind of hit hurdles. And then in February of this year, I was on tour with a concert that I was doing, and I had a difficult conversation with them, and they basically said, look, we want to do a podcast, but we're going to take it in a much more scientific direction. Right. So all of these ideas that I'd had and this planning that I'd been doing and waiting for kind of approval and this, that and the other was now null and void. Mm-hmm. And I thought, do I just let this go? Mm-hmm. Or do I use this as an opportunity to... It's like rejection is redirection, right? So I was like, okay, this is a chance for me to completely turn this on its head, change the angle. And I got really fascinated in the lack of funding, or the cutting of funding of musical education in schools, how the arts are getting less and less money. And I got really sort of angry about it, and I thought, what can I do? How can I use my position? I hate social media. I have a following of, I don't know,
nearly 8,000 people who watch stuff that I do, which is, yeah, it's fine. Like, they want to see what dress I bought from H&M, and they want to see what I had for breakfast, and they want to see what my cat's up to. But how do that's lovely, but how do I use this for good? So I did a lot of research, redirected everything, came up with this concept, which is a love letter to music. And what I want to do is and I have started already, so I'm in the process of editing. I am such a Luddite, but I've got my I've got my sort of grasp of GarageBand now, I think. And I'm at the point now where hopefully by the end of this month I can release a couple of episodes. And I want to interview people from all walks of life, all ages, all backgrounds, all occupations about the role that music has in their life, to demonstrate that it's so powerful, and yet we do it subconsciously. We're not aware of it. And I'm working still with Nordoff Robbins and also with a music education charity called Restore the Music, who fund musical instruments and education in underprivileged schools. And the conversations have just been, I've interviewed so far, I've had Scott Allen, I've had a brilliant jazz vocalist called Jane Monheit from the States, Alice Living, the personal trainer. I've got a young girl, Betsy Griffin, who's from Watford, who is 6 years old, has a brain tumour, and has been having music therapy at Nordoff Robbins. I showed you some videos, didn't I? She's phenomenal. She's just an absolute ray of sunshine. And my hope is that this could potentially become a charity in future, where people write their own love letters to music. We release a book where those letters are released. We can raise awareness of these brilliant charities. We can get more funding into, music education, instruments, access, and also raise awareness of the fact that we have this incredibly powerful tool at our fingertips. For the majority of us, we're privileged enough that we can stream music. We have access to those channels. And scientifically, the way that the brain responds to music, the way that it's used with patients of dementia, the way that athletes use it to motivate them, the way that parents use it to pacify their children, like, there is so much science. The way the brain responds to music is understood to a point, and then it's beyond us. It's this enigma, and I love that, because I believe in the magic of so much, and I just think that we understand enough about it to use it. We don't understand enough about it to lose the magic of it. And I personally can stand on a stage, and I can be going through the absolute worst time of my life, and you can play me a piece of music, or I can sing a piece of music, and it's therapy. It heals me. And 3 of the 4 people that I've interviewed have cried on their interviews, because I think at the moment particularly it's so pertinent, because we all feel in the arts like what we do is not being valued. We're being told that we don't have value. And it's getting me quite choked up thinking about it, because I just think, take away what we do and then see how people can cope with the myriad of difficulties that we face. And I just think that let's use, social media and all of these things. If we have a platform, if we have a voice, let's use it for something that's actually got some substance.
Yeah, that's amazing. And as I say, all against the backdrop of artists being told to retrain and to not be viable. I think it's incredible. So when can we get our hands on?
Well, I'm still learning how it all works, but I think, where are we now? Like the 24th of October, I'm hoping that it will be available on all the usual platforms that you can get your podcasts from. But hopefully by the beginning of November, it will be out there. And if you follow me on any socials, then I will be shouting it from the rooftops. So, and if anybody that you think would be interested in this, it's not science heavy, but it's underpinned by science. And the conversations, I think for anybody that loves music, then, I've just sat there listening to these people just talking about their love affair with music and how they've benefited from it. And it's just, I've tried to cut the interviews down because they're long, but they're so interesting. So I'm just like, if one person listens to it and takes something from it, I think that's all. And it's been a lovely project for me, let's be honest, a coping mechanism for me during this time. So
great.
Yeah, so thank you for allowing me to talk about it.
No worries. Speaking of social media, I am going to at the...
Have you got a few backups in case no one's asked any and you're like, oh, I've got
I can already see that the Twitter is... hang on, let me go to here.
The Watford Massive.
The Watford... So, a question here from Twitter is, hi, how do you protect your voice in a long run? What is it you do?
I get asked this so much, and I wish I had an answer that made any sense, actually. I think common sense plays a massive part in it,
right.
But I think the big thing for me is mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was saying before about voices, I think we have this tendency to see ourselves as very compartmentalised things, and actually we are just one thing. And, if you don't take care of this, then you cannot prioritise the other things. The standard things, hydration, although I drink a lot of coffee, so I'm a terrible example, but I think it's just finding that balance. I remember sitting down with my producer of Wicked when they offered me the part, and he always says this to me, that I had so much gall because I just said, I'm not giving up wine, I'm not giving up cheese, I'm not giving up going out, I'm not giving up coffee. And he was like, wow, I'm your producer, you really should not be telling me this. But I just said to him, for me, I was told once, if you treat it like glass, it will break like glass. So you have to, and I've never, because I haven't trained per se, I've always just sung with my lifestyle the way that it is. I'm not a heavy drinker, I'm not a heavy smoker, and all those things that would perhaps, cause me problems. I think you have a responsibility, plenty of sleep, plenty of water. I exercise a lot, but just listening. I think listening to your body, listening to your needs, your gut instinct. And the big thing for me, actually, ironically, is not necessarily dietary. I do struggle a little bit with acid reflux, so I've had to cut a few food types out. But the big problem for me would be going out and talking over music.
Right.
That's where, because you're straining. And even now when I haven't got a gig or anything the next day, if ever when I used to go out, it was something that I hate it, because I'm very aware I'm pushing.
Yeah.
And I think most singers would kind of relate to that. But I think it's just everything in moderation, because if you cut something out, I just said, I'll be miserable. And I don't want to be miserable. That's as much a priority as anything else. So I think it's just balance, really.
Great. You've played many iconic roles. What's your next or dream role now?
Do you know what? This is actually really sad, because I don't know in this current climate whether I will be able to play my dream roles, because I think I don't know if it will come back in time, because my dream roles are on the sort of younger spectrum. So I've auditioned for Beautiful, the Carole King musical, twice, and got to the final for that twice and not got it, but she needs to be able to play a 15-year-old. And, it's, yes, I'm petite, but there's a limit. The other was Waitress. I would love to play Jenna in Waitress. I was in the final for that, but I'm not doing that. So that's going out, fingers crossed, in May, but I don't know. Again, so that's why with the podcast, with my songwriting, it's kind of, I'm trying to redirect a little bit, because I can't rely on theatre being an option. Actually, maybe Donna and Mamma Mia in like 10 years when it all comes back. Genuinely.
God, I hope it doesn't take that long.
Yeah,
I really hope it doesn't.
Yeah.
Lee, do we have any questions from YouTube?
Yes. What was your experience of doing your training as a master's after doing a more academic degree? I'm hoping to do a musical theatre master's after my degree in drama.
It was wonderful. It was. I felt like I was living like this dream, because I think I'd just gone through this academic, traditional sort of academic journey for so long. It was hard work, but in a very different way. It was much more physically and emotionally demanding. But I'm very, very grateful, for me personally, that I have that, sound like my mum and dad now, but I've got that to fall back on.
Yeah.
And I recognise how privileged I am to have that.
because particularly at this point in time, I'm able to now pivot and go and do some other work in the sport world, for example. But yeah, it's a really different experience, but equally as enjoyable. So hopefully that's...
Final question here from Twitter. Who is your favourite performer and why?
And people are expecting me to say musical theatre, aren't they?
Not necessarily.
I'm going to say probably Karen Carpenter.
And why?
I love the fact that she just let her voice do what it did. There were no bells and whistles. It was just, she didn't even warm up. I think that's probably why I like her. That approach suits me. But there was just such an authenticity to her, a warmth, a love of the music. She just, for somebody who, having read her biographies, which you have to take with a pinch of salt, obviously, because, but she had such a challenging personal life. To see the joy that she got from performing, and I think that just circles back to, with my podcast, I think it's that thing of, music heals people, and I think for her it was her place where she could go and forget about all of the stuff that was going on in her personal life, or even channel that emotion into something. And she just had the most beautiful smile. And when you watch her drumming as well, like
she was a drummer.
Yeah,
oh, really?
She's killer on the drums. And there's so many. I mean, I could just waste hours like YouTubing Karen Carpenter like on the drums and singing. She's amazing. So yeah, I'm going to go with that one unapologetically.
And my question from me, which is, I guess, interesting time to ask it, but if you could give advice to somebody sort of looking to enter into the performing arts world as a career, what's your nugget of advice, words of wisdom?
Gosh, at this point in time.
I know, it's slightly odd. But let's be positive. Let's imagine, we will come back.
Do you know what I would say? That don't be afraid to make mistakes. Because you will. I heard something the other day, I can't remember who it was, so I'm just going to claim it as my own. But they said that with auditions, because I think auditions are a really tricky one for a lot of people with anxiety, and as we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. And whoever it was said it was basically, don't expect to get any of the jobs that you go for. For the first 100 auditions, use it as a chance to get good at auditions. So go in and enjoy the fact that you've got a free concert. So you've got someone playing the song that you've chosen. So you get to choose the song. When do you ever get that choice in anything else? You get to choose the song. You've got a free musician. You've got an audience. They might not like you, but that's, that's a risk we take in every job, isn't it, really?
True.
You get to go in and you get to do this thing that, like, you're getting closer. Every audition that you do, you're getting closer to getting a job. So every one that you get wrong or that you mess up or whatever, you learn from those mistakes. So when I teach, I say, don't sing a song you're not comfortable with, you don't know. This is from experience, because every time I get an audition come through, I go, oh, I'm going to learn a new song. And then you get in there and you've got all of those other things to think about. Yeah. And then the song starts and you think, I don't even know how this goes. So you're better to just stick with what you know. And I think I've had so many awful auditions that it's kind of ruined it for me a bit. We give ourselves such a hard time. So just be kind to yourself and try and enjoy the process. Don't try and be, it's really cheesy, but like a second-rate version of somebody else. Yeah. Like, everybody has got their strength, and if you try and emulate, there's nothing wrong with being inspired by, but if you try and sound like, or you try and look like or perform like somebody else, then you're not being true to yourself, and you could be almost smothering this beautiful quality that you've got, that they're not getting to see because you're trying so hard to be what you think they want, which is something else. Yeah. And I think that's what I'm most proud of is that it took me a lot longer to get the jobs because I wasn't going to go in and give them this clean, bright, twangy musical theatre sound, which wasn't me.
Yeah.
I was like, this is what I do, this is my sound, either give me the job or don't, but I'm not going to change because this is what makes me me.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time I didn't get the jobs because they were like, no, you don't sound like what we expect you to sound like. But every so often someone would take a punt and go, let's give her the job because she's different and she's got something a little bit dangerous or a bit edgy. And it didn't always work in their favour, but sometimes it did.
What a great place to leave it. Now, you're going to sing us out with a song from Waitress the Musical.
Yeah.
So whilst you get yourself set up,
Right.
I'm going to chat to these guys. Thank you so much for joining us today and being such a brilliant audience. We're back next month in what we're now October, November the 28th. Yes, just had to check then. I'm yet to fix entirely the lineup, but it will be a multiple guests. So do sort of stay tuned on our socials and stuff. But to sing us out, it's the wonderful Emma Hatton.
It's not simple to say. Most days I don't recognize me. These shoes, this apron, that place, its patrons have taken more than I gave them. It's not easy to know I'm not anything like I used to be, although it's true I was never attention sweet center. I still remember that girl. She's imperfect, but she tries. She is good, but she lies. She is hard on herself. She is broken and won't ask for help. She is messy, but she's kind. She is lonely most of the time. She's all of this mixed up and baked in a beautiful pie. She is gone, but she used to be mine. And it's not what I asked for. Sometimes life just slips in through a back door and carves out a person, makes you believe it's so true. Now I've got you. You're not what I asked for. If I'm honest, I know I would give it all back for a chance to start over and rewrite an ending or two for that girl that I knew who'd be reckless just enough, who gets hurt but who learns how to toughen up when she's bruised and gets used by a man who can't love. Then she'll get stuck and be scared of a life that's inside her, growing stronger each day till it finally reminds her to fight just a little to bring back the fire in her eyes that's been gone but used to be mine. Oh, she used to be mine. up and baked in a beautiful pie. She is gone, but she used to be mine.
Ladies and gentlemen, Emma Hatton!
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. A massive thank you again to you guys, again for being such a wonderful audience. Please come and join us on November the 28th down here. We'll be welcoming more guests in the Spotlight series. Thank you so much and good night. Thank you.